my honor to welcome everyone here from the Rolex Learning Center. Everyone at home or wherever you are, welcome to this celebration. During the next hour and a half, I will guide you through this opening that has 4 guests. There are 4 speakers who are all very closely related to this building. With us today are 2 science professors and presidents of EPFL, Magna Vitterli and Patrick Ebischer. Welcome. And we have from Japan, Kazuyo Sejima and Yumiko Yamada from SANAA Architects. And I think we don't see you on any screen here, but we know you're here. We are also greeting Ryue Nishizawa, founding partner of SANAA, who was one of the designers of this building, and he unfortunately cannot be here with us right now, but we also greet you warmly. My name is Sabine von Fischer. I'm an architecture critic, and I currently write for NZZ, the Neue Zürcher Zeitung. The main protagonist today, however, is the building where we are at, the Rolex Learning Center. It was 10 years old when EPFL had planned for this celebration, and now we are actually celebrating already the 11th birthday because we had to put it off, as you know. It is a very special building. We're very proud to be here, and it's actually much more than just a building. It is a structure that explores time and space in a unique manner, and we will have some time today to speak about this with our guests. So I will introduce the program briefly before we start. As many of you in the audience already know, the Rolex Learning Center was conceived and commissioned by the former EPFL president Patrick Ebischer, and is now taken care of by the current president, Magna Vitterli. They both will speak to you in a moment. In the second part of this celebration, we start a conversation with 2 partners of the, as many people say, most influential architecture office of our time, the Tokyo-based firm SANAA. I'm honored that Kazuyo Sejima and Yumiko Yamada of SANAA are part of this ceremony. Good evening to Japan. There will be an opportunity for questions from the audience at the end, and for your information, we will gather all the questions in one Q&A after the interview. So our first speaker now is Magna Vitterli, and the audience knows you well, so in a way, I don't need to introduce you. I will briefly say that you have known EPFL close up since you were a doctoral student here, then as a teacher, then as vice president, and now since 2017, you've been president of this institution. And we are now confronted, you have this great task to integrate this unique building with its continuous space and time into this growing campus. So we are very curious to hear how you plan to take the Rolex Learning Center out of these childhood years into the teenager years. So we are looking forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. von Fischer. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. I'm very pleased to welcome our special guests, Kazuyo Sejima from the architecture firm SANAA, as well as her colleague Yumiko Yamada, who managed the construction project, along on the stage with my predecessor Patrick Ebischer, who is now President Emeritus of EPFL. I obviously would have preferred speaking to you in person at the Rolex Learning Center, but the COVID pandemic has decided otherwise. It delayed our festivities by 1 year, as was mentioned, so we are at the 11th anniversary of the Rolex Learning Center, which is the most iconic building on the campus of EPFL. In any case, I'm looking forward to walking once again through the building's rolling hills, a building that, as you know, is very highly frequented here, in compliance, of course, with safety guidelines. The Rolex Learning Center holds a very special place, both on our campus. If you see an aerial photograph or if you fly over the campus, you will immediately recognize the Rolex Learning Center, but it has also a special place in our community and in particular in my own heart. Before moving on, I would like to acknowledge the sponsors that have made possible this fantastic building at EPFL. First, of course, Rolex, as the name indicates. Rolex had a major participation, and this is a result of a very long-standing relationship between EPFL and Rolex through work in material science, in microtechnology, and other engineering fields. Another main player on campus is Logitech, and through our alumnus Daniel Borel, it was possible to actually organize the architecture competition. I'm sure Patrick will tell you more about this. This was really the starting shot for this fantastic project. Then let me mention Losinger from Bouygues Construction Group, who was the principal contractor for this very challenging building. Credit Suisse has a future banking lab in the building, as well as a number of other partners, including Nestlé, Novartis, and SIGPA, who helped us realize this project. Back to our topic. The vast number of students who come to the RLC to study when their classes are given is a testament. When the classes are given online, the students actually show up here because it's the most popular study place on campus. The students compete for the 600 places of study available, and it is the most sought-after spot on campus. And you can understand the students' enthusiasm, given the building's exceptional architecture and welcoming atmosphere. The RLC bustles with activities throughout the day, with people having a cup of coffee, grabbing something to eat, browsing through publications in the public library, or actually studying, buying textbooks, or going to the career center or the alumni center. The building was designed, as was mentioned, by architects Kazuyo Sejima and Ryue Nishizawa of the Japanese firm SANAA. It opens its doors for students, researchers, and the broader community in February 2010. It was officially inaugurated on the 27th of May, almost to the day 11 years ago. Patrick Ebicher, who was president at the time, will tell you more about this in a moment. The RLC is intended to be both a forum for learning, and I see actually I missed my slides, so let me go to the correct slide here. Here we go, okay, the iconic building. The RLC is intended to be both a forum for learning and knowledge sharing and a comfortable place to meet up and work. It now stands as our most iconic building and has become a reference in the field of modern architecture. Proof it is that the Pritzker Prize in 2010, the year of the inauguration, was actually given to the Bureau SANAA. Now, architecture has always been central to EPFL as an engineering and architecture school. And not only is the section and the research of architecture here, we have a special program which was started long ago in 1974, which is called Archizoom, which organizes cultural events around architecture and its interaction with society. So Archizoom has had many events with the public to explore architecture and the challenges of modern architecture. And currently, in this current year, together with EPFL School of Architecture, Civil and Environmental Engineering, Archizoom has brought together these converging interests in a series of events showcasing the discipline. The events start actually today. This is an inaugural event, and I would like to thank Archizoom for having co-organized it. And among the next events are the so-called dialogues between architects and artists or thinkers from the broader community. It is a series of monthly talks where two experts from different fields will explore modern issues related to the built environment. The dialogues will give participants a valuable opportunity to share their knowledge, experience, and opinions. The first one will be held tomorrow, 26th of May, and features the writer Briand Dillon and Christophe van Gerwe, the head of EPFL's Architecture Critique, History and Theory Lab. Van Gerwe will present his new book, Savoir Supérieur, which walks you through the history of the RLC. Another commemorative event will be the Affirmative Action Symposium, given by EPFL's Institute of Architecture on the 29th of May, this coming Saturday. At this symposium, 15 female architects from around the world will discuss how their profession can respond to today's shifting architecture landscape. Similar events will be held throughout the year. For instance, EPFL will exhibit the models submitted by all architecture firms that competed for the project. I actually remember very well the initial exhibit, which was probably in 2008, when the project of SANAA was actually selected. And I remember walking into the exhibition space and immediately zooming in onto this famous and very particular building, which ends up being the Rolex Learning Center. For some reason, I fell in love at first sight, as we could say, and have been ever since. We will also host a series of talks featuring prominent international architects. All events will, of course, be open to the public, just as the RLC is. We will naturally have to comply with health and safety measures that are in effect at the time. The RLC is just as contemporary now as it was 10 years ago, when it was unveiled. That has made it our unofficial mascot, embodying our school's ideal, always at the cutting edge of innovation, teaching, research, and technology transfer. Now, Dr. von Fischer asked about the future and the campus, and I must be very honest, it's not so easy to build a campus once the standard has been set by a building like the RLC. So let me walk you through a few of the projects that are currently ongoing. So a new neighbor of the RLC will be Radio-Télévision Suisse Romande. They will open their Lausanne-based production center on the campus in 2025. The new building will house RTS radio, television, and digital activities, and including new teams and evening news programs. A number of spaces in the building will be open to the public, adding another facet to our campus. Let me mention also that EPFL continues to grow. By 2032, in a bit more than 10 years, we are expecting our student body to grow by 25% and our workforce to expand by almost 20%. In the medium term, 2 advanced science buildings meant for the experimental sciences will go up. The first one will be an architectural and engineering feat. It must meet very strict standards such as low vibration, resistance to EM interference, to humidity and temperature stability. It will allow our researchers to carry highly controlled environment in cutting-edge topics like quantum science and engineering. And new buildings in some of the open spaces, some of the parking spots, will host activities and training programs in science to entrepreneurship. And one building that is currently in the works will provide our engineering students with experimental space for material prototyping. A number of other projects are nearing completion. One that is purely technical, but very important, is a thermal power plant and a data center, which will be cooled by water coming from the lake as a source of cooling, and the heat from the data center will be used as a source of heating. And last but not least is the example of the Discovery Learning Labs that you see here on the right side, which is coming up right now, and is a building specifically geared at doing course projects for students where essentially teams are building cutting-edge engineering projects. I must admit that I'm very excited to see EPFL continuing to grow. But EPFL will grow without losing its human dimensions. There are a number of projects in the work to make the campus actually much more attractive to non-car-based humans, l'espace piétonnier, as we say. There are also projects for greening the campus to make it also more sustainable. Our school's excellent reputation, our ability to maintain our competitive edge requires us to constantly upgrade our infrastructure. But that's not the only role of architecture. I will quote John Ruskin, an famous art critic: "The architecture of a city should touch and not merely offer a simple service to the body of man." The Rolex Learning Center has illustrated this principle for the past 10 years and will certainly do so in the future. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Monsieur Vitterli. I see the ambitions have not decreased at all. They're big plans. I just want to ask you a question about the present. So in this building that you, I assume, spent some time in, which one would be your favorite place of all the places that are here?
The Rolex Learning Center? Mm-hmm. I'm afraid it's the obvious place. It's a cappuccino shop, so it's not very original. No, I have to be honest. There is another spot that I love, of course, is the library. I'm a lover of books, and the mathematics library, which used to be in the math department, actually has moved to the Rolex Learning Center library. And it's open essentially at all times, and contains some of the most famous books, also historical books of mathematics. So these are the two spots, and the two go very well together.
They go well together. And do you think there are things that happen in this open space that is open all the time and has no doors? Are there things here that could not happen anywhere else?
Yeah, absolutely. You see, academia has, it's both a feature and a weakness, has this approach to having discipline-oriented spaces, buildings, departments, sections, and so on. And what's beautiful about the RLC is that it is not a disciplinary building. It's a building that is open actually to the public, but it's especially open to the entire campus. So people will meet in the Rolex that otherwise on campus might never meet because they live in different disciplinary buildings. I think that's really why this is the heart of the campus.
It's beautiful. In 2010, when it opened, Kazuyo Sejima also curated the Venice Biennial, and that the slogan was "People meet in architecture." So 2010 was really the year when it happened. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So it's my honor to introduce the next speaker, Patrick Ebischer, who was president of EPFL for nearly 2 decades. And those include the years of the conception and construction of the Rolex Learning Center. Patrick Ebischer played a decisive role in the birth of this project back in 2003, when on the occasion of the 150th anniversary of the university, the idea was born. And his ideas were also crucial in the conception of this emblematic structure that now houses all the, as you said, the 17 libraries, information communication technologies, and fosters learning and learning about learning, and I think it will sound much better in your words. So, and also under your guidance, the sponsors came on board, which we should say, which were already named. So we're very curious to hear your story. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you, and specifically to Kazuyo Sejima and Yumiko Yamada. So I really regret that we do not see each other physically, because what a memory. 10 years ago, it all started from what I call a vision to an architectural project. In fact, in 2000, the new direction started, I would say, an ambitious program, which was to transform a good engineering school into a world-class research institute of science and technology. The second real, aim was to build a lively campus. And the third one was to contribute to the economic development of the arc lémanique, thinking this is one of the main missions that EPFL would have. Now, I do remember, when I arrived on this campus as an outsider and wandering around the libraries. There were at least 10 of them. I would say rather unattractive, all over the campus with restricted access. And I do remember one of our colleagues, Andreas Mortensen at the time, said there's one thing urgent about this campus. We need a new library. So I took on this task and thought that we needed to build something, but not just a library, but we had a feeling that learning was changing. So we called this project Building the Future of Learning. That was the name of the project. So, and we gave it 3 tasks. One was to build an iconic edifice or building reflecting EPFL's ambition to become a world-class research institute. The second, I think, was very closely related, was to develop the concept of a learning center that would promote new educational approaches. And I think without having this, we would not be as well equipped as we are today during a pandemic. By the way, this is the kind of child and grandchild entering in MOOCs and massive open online curve. But this was just the fact that we were smelling that something was changing. And the third one, which was new to EPFL, in fact, to Swiss University, is jumpstart a real philanthropic culture. And that was not an easy task, to be honest. Now, let's go back to the beginning. So that was very early on in our minds of the new direction, but really conceptually represented in March 2003. As was said, during the 150th anniversary of the ancestor of EPFL, and I do remember one evening, and I had talked to Daniel Borel, who was an alumni, and to say that we had this dream, but we needed to have some resource to launch a competition. And he gave with a check of 1 million. And that was striking because there were a lot of guests, and they said that maybe this is possible in Switzerland. So with this, we went to a design competition in February 2004, a jury selection. We started the construction in 2008, and as was said, we inaugurated with the Federal Council, Didier Burkhalter, in fact, on May 27th. So, but let's go back to history a little bit. So how did we start? We started with a call of tenders with 181 candidates worldwide. We made then a selection of those. By the way, this would not be possible today under the SIA rules. This is also something interesting to reflect on. So we did what we call a mandate for parallel studies with 12 renowned architects. There were 3, in fact, a 4th got the Pritzker after Jean Nouvel, and rising stars. And we did this with the help of the School of Architecture. And I have to acknowledge, really there, Inès Lamunière, Patrick Berger, who were critical to try. I was asking, who are the rising architects? And they told me there is this rising Japanese group called SANAA. I do remember very vividly. I said it's critical that we also, because I'm a fan of architecture, specifically Asian architecture, to invite them. Now we set up a high-level jury with renowned architects like Anne Lacaton, who, by the way, is the Pritzker laureate of this year, with David Chipperfield, with Mike Goyer, Brigitte Schim, Charles Kleber, our state secretary, who is an architect by training, and also several of our professors, again, Inès Lamunière, Patrick Berger, Jeffrey Huang, Jacques Lacaton, Martin Stedman. So we had all the top architects of our school, plus some very well-renowned architects. And then we gave the location. Now this people tend to forget. At the place of the Rolex, there was a parking slot, and just right to it, there was an awful garage that we had to buy back. I had to convince the guy, the owner, to sell me the property, to build it. That was kind of, so I did a lot of heavy eating, drinking, trying to convince them to sell us the land. Now with this, we launched this, and we had 12 maquettes rendu, as we say in French. And let me just go over quickly. There was a sublime springboard from Herzog and de Meuron. I had spoken to them, and they adapted. I thought that was a very interesting. Then we had what I call a majestic pyramid from Rem Koolhaas, from Oma, who was very much in his style. I couldn't see really, it was probably too ambitious for the EPFL at the time and too flashy. There was a very intriguing green village from Jean Nouvel that now he evolved and created something, but it was not sufficiently open for us to select it. Then there was an audacious sculpture of Zaha Hadid, who was also a Pritzker Award. And then there was another project. I do remember when Jean-François Arici, my general secretary, opened the box and said there's 11 projects and there's another one. I don't fully understand how it is. It was an organic wave. And then it was very flat. The rest was kind of phallic representation or whatever. And then one was just discrete. And here were two architects nearly shy presenting, because each of them came. I remember Rem Koolhaas, Jean Nouvel, and so on. And those two Japanese just fascinated the public. So, and the winner is, of course, SANAA. And why did we give them the project? Because the proposed program offers a new living space, opens up the possibility, very interesting, of new teaching approaches. So they had understood what we wanted. Everything being integrated into one single building as a place of assembly and breeding ground for enriching encounters and synergies. And that's really what I think the Rolex Learning Center does. Now, there was a little problem. I do remember the day where we had to take the vote. It was the most expensive. At the time, it was put at 80 million. But I was so much in love of the thing that I said, don't worry, I'll find the money. And of course, that gave me a lot of gray hair, because I put myself in a corner. I said, I'll find 50% of the funding. Now, of course, it increased the price, and it ended up at 110. So we had to find 55 million, which at the time was not negligible. It would still not be the case today also, probably. So we went, what I call, from a vision to reality. We had the design. How did we go by? So we did, with Jean-François, a bottom-up process to define the building content. So we have many groups of potential user customers to see what they wanted to do. And of course, the architects translated this into a space organization. It was just a fascinating time to see where functions would go, how they would flow. And I think, SANAA did an incredible work and to try to sense what was the right way to proceed. I do remember very well the various models. You could see them at different size. The right one in the exhibition at nearly a human size. I do remember I visited SANAA in Tokyo, and I remember hundreds of piles of those models. I couldn't believe it. Unfortunately, we didn't have iPhone. I should have taken the photograph to see how much work there was in. And I've learned how much, intuition, reality goes into those models. Then there was a little detail, is to construct it. And of course, this was very, innovative. We had to do a reinforced concrete shell, with the two waves based on thixotropic cement. I've learned the term at the time, that a cement that flows, but not flows too much so that it can stay. We had to do timber formwork elements, 1,500 of them, isolating curve and bays and cut glass windows and so on. And this is thanks to a lot of the know-how that was present here on campus. In fact, nobody wanted to sign the plan. And we found one of our retired Professor Walter, who's finally signed. With one exception, he mandated one column that you could still see on the outside to hold the system. That was how far it goes. And I do remember always one of this evening when we poured concrete in the big wave. There was an incredible storm, and we had to call Cointrin, the Geneva airport, to know exactly how the storm would move while you couldn't stop the pouring of the concrete. And you could see those people. I have a lot of admiration for the people that were building there. But they also had the feeling that they were doing something, unusual, something historic for them. And that was one of the most incredible times. As I said, we had, of course, to cost optimize, because it would start at 80. When we did the planning, we said it would 100, and then it turned out to be at 110. So I had to go and find this money. And of course, I was very lucky with Rolex. I do remember the day I signed it. I went to Rolex Learning Center. I signed it. That was a big check. And I came outside this building. I was dancing in the street. People must have thought that I was crazy. But for me, it was such a relief, because I knew that this building from that day would become a reality. And of course, we had to go on and find, and you could see Rolex, Sigma, Novartis, Credit Suisse, Logitech, Nestle, and Bouygues Lozinger. Now, the most amazing thing, of course, we weren't anxious to know. This building was beautiful, but would it function? And it was immediate. Adoption by the students, by the public. The TV came to do telejournal, whatever. You could see that, there was something unique about this building, and it is still today. 10 years after, as we say in French, il n'a pas pris une ride. It didn't age a bit. Now, of course, it went much beyond what we had anticipated. For you to have a couple examples, the Federal Council came incorporate while we were building it. That's where the initial Iran nuclear treaty was announced, with all the foreign ministers just here in this street. We had to block the entire campus, nearly at least, surrounding the Rolex Learning Center. We had state visit here, François Hollande, TED Talks. Wim Wenders came to shoot a film with Sejima and Nishizawa that was presented at the Biennale, and I had to do crazy things with students over the time. It is, but most importantly, it is the house of the students. So we could say, just to summarize, EPFL had its iconic building. So, and as was said before, on the same year, SANAA was awarded the Pritzker Award 2010, where obviously this building was cited. It probably was instrumental. I do remember members of the Pritzker coming and visiting the building on that year, looking at it even during construction. Of course, it became it obtained worldwide visibility. Every journal of the world was speaking about it as an unusual event. And that's, of course, we were looking for something. So our dream went beyond even anything we could imagine. I love it, this thing from, I think it was the Guardian say, now, that's what I call a learning curve. And I think, but just before finishing, I would like to give back to Caesar what is Caesar's. And of course, there were many people. It is very unfair not to name them. But first and most important was Daniel Borel. Without him, we could have financed the competition that made this thing possible. Of course, Kazuyo Sejima and Ryue Nishizawa, they are the designer. They imagined this. But there was a lot of very key people that made this possible. Francis Luc Perret, at the time, the vice president, who really followed with Eric Maino and Vincent Joya, who were representing the construction unit at EPFL. And I'm happy to have Yumiko on the other side of the world. She was absolutely critical. She lived, I think, nearly 3 years and following this project. And I'm very happy to learn that now she became one of the partners of SANAA. We're very proud of you. That was just the seed, the RLC. And I think it was very important not to finish it there. So I think, this was a seed for other landmark buildings. And the art lab we needed to create a piazza, to create something central to the campus. And I think the building of Kengo Kuma does this in the most elegant way that I can think of. We went beyond, we created the Swiss Tech Convention Center with the student housing. So now EPFL has a campus with various quartiers that are lively when there's no pandemic. And I think this is just the beginning of a big story to come. Most important thing, the RLC, the Rolex Learning Center, is the heart today of the campus with its Place Cozandet. And I think both Martin, myself, and our two other predecessors have to acknowledge the person that was key to have this campus. The man that federalized EPUL of the time to become EPFL. And his name was Maurice Causandet. That was for the cornerstone. He was 90 years old. He just passed away last year at 100 years old. He saw the Rolex. I remember him being just fascinated because he was a civil engineering by training. And we're all very proud and grateful to him to have allowed us to do this campus. But also with the help, as I said, of SANAA, Keigo Kuma, Dominique Perrault, with the mechanical engineering just behind, Dieter Dietz, and his students that arranged the piazza. So with this, I think we have what we wanted at the time, which is a landmark and a living campus. So what should I say for the future? And my vision, and that's more for my successor and the others, is EPFL should never forget one thing. And I love this quote from Georges Danton, the French revolutionary, that says, de l'audace, encore de l'audace, toujours de l'audace. We must dare and dare again and go on daring. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your story. We've always known that it takes a client and an architect, but it was very exciting to hear the story from the client's side. An adventure, truly. So I will also ask you two questions. So when you chose this project out of this firework of ideas, you had a certain expectation. So was there something when you came into the finished building that took you by surprise?
I would say it's the space. I had the impression that I am in an open, I don't know if I'm inside, outside. I am in a fluid environment that I'm in nowhere elsewhere in the world. And I think that's what makes it so fascinating. I don't know, I am part of the world. I am not inside, I am not outside, I am somewhere in the middle. And this is what fascinates me. And the second thing that fascinates me, I am not in, I am sometime under. I don't know whether if I'm under, I'm in. So the sign of, it's a building with 6 sides. You never have the bottom that is a side by itself. So it's as enjoyable to be in than being out. And this is something just magical.
And you think it also does something to university life?
Yeah, because
here?
now, of course, it became an iconic building. Everybody, when you speak about EPFL, you have a photo of this. But even in Switzerland, or even beyond, when you speak about a university, often it's our Hauptgebäude. It's our Hauptgebäude of today. So I think we are with the time, but I think we know that with time it will last. Because those are the ultimate buildings, are there forever. And I'm sure that this one has the quality to pass the time.
I really wish for the building and for you, yes. And it is worth it. So I think it is time to honor the architects of the building who conceived of its design. So do we see them on the screen so we can add? Here you are, welcome. So I'm honored, well, nice to meet you on the screen. I'm honored that SANAA's founding partner, Kazuyo Sejima, and the Rolex Learning Center's project leader, and since 2013 also partner at the firm, Yumiko Yamada, are here with us today to enter into a conversation. Before we start, I will briefly introduce them to the audience. So Kazuyo Sejima and her firm SANAA are the recipients, as actually has been said already, of numerous prizes, the most prominent, the Pritzker, but there have been a lot of other prestigious awards that went their way. And the year 2010 really was a year when the ideas, the visions of the project, also of the biennial with people meeting architecture, come together in this building and somewhat materialized. And I think it resounds here in the space as it is used, and it also even resounds at the biennial in Venice, where now the theme, how will we live together, is also a continuation of the theme you set in 2010. So we are now missing SANAA's second founding partner, Ryue Nishizawa, And I just want to quote something from the book that has already been mentioned. Christophe von Gerwey tells the story of this building. He writes about, he said, it's quoted in the book, he says about Kazuyo Sejima, "She is the bravest person I have ever known." And I think it's a nice quote also with the context of all the bravery it took to get this building built. SANAA have designed also other path-breaking buildings, and I think what they did is they have also propelled architectural concepts of the 20th century into the future, into the 21st century and beyond. And these are the transparencies that were set out by Mies van der Rohe. It's the openness of space that's set out by Lino Bobardi. It's the material magic that we find in the work of Swiss architects like Peter Zumthor and Herzog and de Meuron. And then yet this is unique. This is only here that how the Rolex Learning Center addresses time and space. I think this is the moment that touches us so much here, that ultimately, as a space, this is where many activities, many different activities can take place simultaneously together, and they are happening right now here as we speak with the 600 students that are also in this building. So, Yamada-san, you said during the preparations for this day today, a few weeks ago, you said, there is never a time when there's no one inside. And so from morning to evening, learning and eating and reading in all disciplines happens here in this one vast, single and open space. And so I think this continuity of time and space is really a moment that touches and lasts and outstands a lot of architecture that we know. So let me come to the first question. Sejima-san, so you speak of architecture that is one with the environment as a core idea of your work. So the question is, do you believe that people, when they inhabit a space, that they make this connection between the building and the environment? Or is the building that is already there before, is it the building that creates the connection between the inside and the outside, even before people arrive in the space?
Yes. Before answering, can I say one small thing? First, I'd like to thank you very much for inviting us. We are very happy and feel honored to be able to join this important ceremony. And also, even we are really happy to see Mr. Abhishek. I don't see more than 10, maybe. And so I like to start our conversation. And yes, I believe the building can be connected to the environment before we enter. And we want to make such a building, even just to stand in the environment, already the people can feel the building is connected to the environment. But at the same time, if people enter the building, maybe we can feel, so the building help we feel are connected to the environment. This is, we think.
So
you understand?
You're saying that
yes.
the building really also helps people use
yes.
it and inhabit it.
Yes. Before we enter the building already, but building will help, I think. And this is what I think.
So before I go to the second question, when you came to the finished building, was it a surprise? I asked Patrick Ebischer, was it a surprise? Was it a surprise for you when you entered the finished building?
Of course, but of course we often visit or during the construction site, so we see. So one of the most surprising time is actually we had the news we could win. And second, very, I really surprising the time is when the concrete finish. And then, of course, the completion. And also after I visit the EPFL, so many people were using with own way. So it's also very surprising, and I felt very happy. This is for important period, maybe.
Thank you. So, Yamada-san, you've lived and worked in Lausanne actually not for 4 years, for a long time, during the construction of the Rolex Learning Center, and you were part of making this intrinsically abstract idea a physical building that. So this physical one room that is no doors, no walls, no fixed walls. So it all sounds like a very simple idea, but was it really so simple to build it?
No.
We know.
It was not. We also thought it was a very simple and beautiful idea to have all of the libraries and programs and people in one space, but it was absolutely not easy to build. We needed cooperation from the building officials, EPFL, fire department. We had all the acousticians, the builders, everyone needed to contribute to make the space comfortable for everyone, for each program. And in the end, I think everyone had to go back to the basics of what is most important and how to achieve this, and that took a lot of time, but I think it was worth the effort. But no, it was not easy. I think. Do you want to add?
Yes, but from the beginning, I was very interested in to make a place like a park where people can meet. But actually, this is almost the first and almost last such a one room space, and where people can spend their own time and see each other. Normally, the big building need a little bit more wall, but really, this so many people collaborate together, and it, of course, the Abhishek and also the many people from EPFL also supported us, and then realized it's really difficult, but it could.
Yeah, from what I've read, the interdisciplinary aspect that is now in the finished built work, that people meet and work together, I understand from what I read about the construction project, it was also a lot about collaboration of a lot of people. So there during the construction, so is there a moment that you remember, especially in this collaboration of making? We heard about pouring the concrete, which I think was one of the bigger adventures. Is there another moment that you could tell us a story during the 4 years that you were in Lausanne, when you were especially happy or especially anxious?
But before the construction, Our plan made with many engineers. So we made, of course, the first one, but then, of course, the very important collaboration with structure engineer, but acoustic, and also the wind movement, natural ventilation, and many engineers suggested us to do this, so that the position of the courtyard or the size has changed a lot. And then finally defined with many engineers together.
I think one of the first things I remember very well, someone told us that the only room at EPFL which has air conditioning is the president's office, except the laboratories. And I remember thinking,
yes,
wow, how are we going to make this entire space comfortable, this 15,000 square meter space comfortable for all of the occupants? And it's naturally warmer up on the hill. It's colder down on the bottom, and I think one of the happiest moments was when all of the engineers decided to take everything out of the building, and it made everything so much more simple. We have no ducts in the ceiling, which made the roof very thin, and that could be achieved just by opening the windows. And that was a really nice moment for us, because it would make everything more comfortable. It made the building more beautiful, and we were very happy about that.
It's beautiful, yeah. So, Sejima-san, I understand that the simplicity that you strive for here, it obviously took a lot of work, and engineers did lots of simulations, and you had to adjust your design. So, but all these different movements, like you've described, you come to the building, sometimes you go under, you're under and over and on top and behind and below and inside and outside, and it's all a big loop where we find ourselves suddenly inside, looking at the inside from the inside as if we were outside. So this loop and these movements with all the users that are here, like on the one side there are the technical simulations on how to make it work, but you as architects, how do you model all the movement of the building, of the people through the building? How do you anticipate, like how do you model these movements in the space?
But because this competition, we are asked to think about a new learning space. And our answer is to make a place where people can meet. And the people who learn the different things or belong to different society can meet is a kind of one of the most important learning thing. So the most special thing, I think, this building is the one story, but the entrance is center. Normally, the entrance sit the perimeter, but the people can everywhere to come to the center of this building is the most special thing. And then also the EPFL asked architects to think about collaboration with local residents, and also Lausanne University. So basically we thought it's very important to invite everywhere to come to this building, so the entrance become many entrances. And then also we propose one big one-room space, so somehow we must find another way, not use wall, but another way that each program can have own some comfortability or some independency. So that we made 2 hills and also the few courtyards which divide each program softly. So these are the kind of basic circulation suggest the people to use order to pass this building. And also the site is in front of the existing EPFL main campus. So we didn't want to make just block the view to the main campus. So we want to lift up some part and people can also easily pass this building to the main campus. This is also one main our concept.
So when you imagine all these courtyards and slopes and hills, do you test them in drawings or in computer models or in physical models?
A lot of physical models. A lot of physical models. Back then, we did not use so much three-dimensional computer renderings or modeling. That was really the beginning. So we had a very large model, and we would crawl underneath the table and stick our head up through one of the courtyards to see what the space. And so it was very low-tech designing.
And the computer followed.
The computer followed, yes.
So the models were in Tokyo, and then you invited Patrick Ebischer to stick his head through the model in Tokyo.
I think we still have many models in our storage that
We should have them.
You should keep them, definitely.
I'll be happy to have them.
So before we go to the next question, do you think if you were to do a building like this one today, would you still do it with physical models, or would you also work digital?
Still, we are making the physical model, but now we use a lot of also the 3D rendering, both parallel.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we don't really have, unfortunately, enough time to talk about all your other work, which is also so highly interesting. So then there is another question that I think if we talk about the building here and now is, Yamada-san, I wonder, the building changes a lot. A lot of people compare it to a landscape. And it changes with the weather. Sometimes it reflects the sky, sometimes it disappears like a cloud. And it is playing a lot with ambiguity between inside and outside, obviously, but it's an ambiguity of the boundary in also a larger sense. And that, I think, is a theme in the work of SANAA, that maybe you could say something. So sometimes I wonder, do you think that Japanese architecture leans itself more easily to building ambiguity, in a sense that there is no fixed form to an object?
I think, the environment is very important in vernacular architecture, also in Japanese vernacular architecture. I think Nishizawa-san talks about always the engawa, which is the corridor around the building that kind of is the in-between space between the interior and exterior of Japanese homes. But I think, and there's also the overhangs of the roofs, and then the moving panels, which extend or limit a space in Japanese architecture. And I think that's somehow in our DNA to be a little bit closer to nature or the outside. But I think what all of these architectural parts are really doing is kind of giving or acknowledging what we can't see, like the air, the sunlight, and such things. And I think somehow, I think we do try to try to do that so that we are a little bit closer to the environment. I'm not sure if I've answered your question.
No, you've answered the question, but maybe you can. So you were also saying that there's a sensory component in how you connect to the space. It's through the climate, in temperature, in vision. Is that what you want? That the environment, I said weather in the question. That your design is also that, or the question is then maybe like what is the conceptual part of your design impetus, and how much is it a sensory approach?
Maybe it is always for us challenging, but to try to find a way building to be kind of not really integrated, but try to find a way with environment. Somehow, 動く循環ってなんていうの? Circulation, even more and more now we try to find a way, the part of the circulation of the cycle.
It's a very timely issue to build with the environment, so this is why I would like to continue a bit on this question, that you built this really large building without air conditioning, which you say then you, which is now, I think architects think a lot more about climate and how the building interacts with climate. So
yes, so the EPFL site is very close to the big lake, and behind some mountain, and then so every local area has a specific some condition, and then maybe it's also very nice to fit or to touch or to be in under the special character.
Yeah, and the air circulate, like the slopes actually help the air circulation in the building, which in a way make it also a model building for how to ventilate a building without air conditioning. So in that sense, it's 10 years later, suddenly it also becomes a sort of answer to the one question of air conditioning in the climate crisis, that we can say we have a climate crisis. So do you think we can speak of the Rolex Learning Center also as a model building in a climate crisis?
I think so. And then also we learn a lot through this building. And of course, I think the environment, but also this is including I think the people also. I think that.
For the occupants, that they feel comfortable and safe and inside the building. So I think that's part of the that makes also the climate.
Yeah, you've written about sound and the sound and the air. This thing is very interesting. I'm looking at the time. We are now. The questions from the audience actually are already here. So I think this is a lot. There is a lot to continue talking about, and we have a small slot of time with audience questions that we can go a little deeper into it. So there is the first question to SANAA. I'm reading from the screen. Hello, congratulations for this astounding building. The first model from your office shows trees in the courtyards, and I would like to hear what you architects, what you think that about the absence, that now there are sculptures in the courtyard but not trees. Is that the whole question? Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, the competition, the beginning, our intention is also to plant the trees, but actually many integration, it became very difficult. And then we started to put the trees around, and then also this, also we realized it's very difficult to find the exact place. So the end, it's not happened. But actually, sometimes I told at the lecture through this experience, also we learned what we started. The point is we started why we couldn't find the exact place to put the trees. This is the kind of
Maybe I can follow
next
up.
challenge after EPFL.
Yeah, we've learned that there are a lot of difficulties that you mastered. So obviously there was not enough, that the trees didn't fit with all the other things that fit. So do you, yeah, but then I should stay with you. We don't have so much time. So maybe can I take the Magna Vitterli question as the next one? Do you want to?
Yeah, happy to take this one. So indeed, we are a public institution, and we do have.
We have to tell the audience what the question is. So the question is, I don't fully understand first.
Let me rephrase the question. Isn't the first sponsor of the Rolex Learning Center the Swiss Confederation? Before Rolex, Credit Suisse, and so on. And so I'm happy to take this one. I'm not sure on which camera I am. So of course, as a public institution, the Swiss Confederation is the main sponsor of everything we do at EPFL. About 2/3 of our budget comes from the Swiss Confederation, the rest is competitive. But I must say, and that I think Patrick said it, and again, I salute his visionary action at the time, I don't think we would ever have gotten this building sponsored by the Swiss Confederation. I mean, I spent a lot of time, in Bern, in various, committees and so on. This does not fly with the Swiss Confederation. The only way to get it done, and I'm sure you will agree with this, Patrick, was to actually get sponsorship to get it going. Okay. And there are many projects like this, I have to say, where as much as I respect public funding tends to be a little bit conservative. Also for research, if you do totally out of this world research, it's very hard to get a grant from another institution I know very well, which is the National Swiss Science Foundation. And so I think the reason why we acknowledge it in particular is that having 50% of the building sponsored really allowed it to be constructed. You want to elaborate?
No, to the point. I think the Swiss Confederation would have never sponsored the waves. It would have been a perfect rectangular, boring building. But I think I said we would try to find the sponsors to pay the waves and to make it something. And I think the Swiss Confederation gets it back, because now it gives visibility to EPFL. And I think the people enjoy the fact that we've maintained this building open, not only to students, but to the public, which is unusual. It was also a way to get the people, the taxpayer, to take advantage of the building. They're proud and they like to use it. So I think both the Swiss Confederation and the sponsors are happy, and they are both essential. But I think it was very important. As Marta said, we could have never ever. The budget that I had at the time was 40 million. So we could have never done, such a building like this. So I think that's why we're very, thankful to the various sponsors, because they allowed us to make something unusual.
I hope this answer was satisfactory to the audience. I think it was very clear. Thank you. So I have two more questions before we go on. And so the other two questions about the buildings are addressed to SANAA. And the first one I see is something that I think has been discussed a lot already, that the slopes, the landscape you created is that sometimes it is a wild landscape, like in a landscape outside. So it doesn't, though it is, the steep slope are sometimes a little hard for people with reduced mobility to go up and down. So what the question is, so how could architects deal with or welcome people who have a harder time going up a steep slope?
I mean, during the project, we worked, we spent a lot of time with listening and working together with the reduced mobility representatives of EPFL, and also the I think they were called ABACA at the time, and we exchanged ideas. And finally, for the Rolex building, we designed the inclined elevator in certain places so that people could climb and go down the slopes more easily. And there's also the slopes and the lifts that we've added to the building. And I think in the end, I think they were nice additions to the building. It gives it character. It gives a more feeling of I think it feels more welcome and animated, the building, and it shows the movement. So, I mean, we did our best at the time to try to accommodate and listen to everyone's opinions about how to achieve accessibility in the building.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's again a story that you couldn't go with just the 40 million to build it, and you couldn't just go with the SEL standard to make it the landscape it is now. So I think there should be, there are a bunch of books about the buildings, but I think this whole negotiation and process probably deserves even more documentation. So I'll take the last question. Is it? Yeah, this is the last. So there is a question that follows up on the issue of transparency in architecture. So I read the question. We see a lot of transparency in SANAA's projects, and especially including here. Is this a reminiscence of the traditional aspect of Japanese architecture and its link to nature, or is the transparency something else?
Yeah, I think in Japan, the transparency is not only, I think, the visually, but also people can understand how the building is built. So it's some clearness or simpleness is also, for Japanese, it's feel transparency, and also I believe transparency makes diversity. So that sense for us, also visual transparency is important, but of course, too much transparent glass is not fit to the environmental issue, the energy issue. So actually the EPFL, looks many build the facade glass, but proportionally the one-story building. So very low glass and deep space. So actually the simulation said if we use the natural light as much as possible, the glass part is not enough. So under the building, the stone or the material for the floor outside is not dark color because of to reflect the color to bring to the inside. Reflect the light. Reflect the light. So the people said a lot of transparency, but actually maybe not high, and also sorry. So there are two issues. The transparency is very important, and I think it's value. But at the same time, we must care how the energy issue. This is what I said. And also I want to say, and also how to use this also relate. Our building doesn't have the end. So always prepare some circulation come back. And really the end also gives some light. So people can feel very transparency. But this is not only the amount of the transparent glass.
Yes, so it is the transparency in architecture is a very loaded term. So on the one hand, there is the 20th century discourse that when you say it's metaphorical, it's also about the reflection from the environment into the building and the exchange. So is there also especially, I think the question also wanted to know, is there something in Japanese culture that has a special take on this idea of transparency?
Yes, but I say the transparency doesn't mean that just visually transparent. Japanese building or custom use more the movable sliding door, or these as a total, as our experience feel transparency. This is maybe what I want to say.
Which I think is realized in this building, as we see with the continuous space and the movement and the connection. And we are nearly on time, a little over time. We are now moving to the announced, so Cyril Veillon from Argizoom, the architecture gallery here at EPFL, is going to say something about future events here. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much, Sabine. Yeah. Hello everybody. I just take 2 minutes of your time to remind you that this is the first event of a long series of different events, surprises that will happen. We needed a full year to celebrate a building like the Rolex Learning Center. And so when we've been asked to imagine what to do to celebrate a decade of the life of a building, together with the curators of Archizoom, Teresa Choing, Silvia Groaz, and Tiago Borges, we ask ourselves what this building has brought in architecture, but also in our life, our work, and in our community. And so it has been said that the design of the Rolex Learning Center is really embodies the meeting and exchange of knowledge. So it's true that it's a construction, but you don't see walls when you enter this building. You see a space. So this openness calls for encounters, and especially encounters from people of different disciplines. So this is why we want to propose you a series of dialogues. And why dialogues? Because this is not only the idea of exchanging ideas, experiences, opinions, but also the desire to learn from each other. And so I really want to say this again. So the idea of the dialogue and what we want to offer to this building is a possibility to learn from each other. And it has been said, the first dialogue will already happen tomorrow night. It will be the occasion of the launch of this book, Higher Knowledge, written by Christophe van Gerewey. And it's a book that has been written especially for the decade of the celebration of the Rolex Learning Center. It will be the top on literature and architecture. Christophe van Gerewey will be in dialogue with the British writer Brian Dillon. So they will talk about the essay as a form of thinking, a form of writing and reading, but also how architecture can be interpreted as a form of, as a general cultural subject. I think if you read the book, I really encourage you to read the book, you will understand how this building is coming from our culture, why this building exists today, and also how it shapes our cultural, our contemporary culture. So we'll talk about more tomorrow night. And the next event this week will be the symposium Affirming Actions. And we will have 15 women architects coming from all over the world. And they will discuss, try to understand in architecture if there are models of practice that could be seen more contemporary than others in the light of their capacity to really tackle environmental and technological disruption of our time. So this will be a full day of discussion on the architecture practice. And the day will end with a very special conversation with Denise Scott-Brown. We are very happy to have Denise Scott-Brown from Philadelphia talking about her very long experience in urban planning and architecture. And of course, there will be many other events during the year, mostly this autumn, and organized also by the library of EPFL, by different associations. It will be very diverse. And in April 2022, we can have a new rendezvous. And here, I hope, we all really hope that it will be finally in presence and that we can welcome you, Sejima-san and Yumiko-san, in presence in your building, because we also have to party together. So I invite you to follow now all this program that will be announced as it will be organized during the year and announced on the website. The website is 10rlc.epfl.ch. You can see it on the screen. So thank you to join us for all these different events, and thank you very much for everybody. So Sabine.
Thank you, Cyril, for letting us know what is happening in the immediate future and for making us look forward to having SANAA and Sejima-san and Yamada-san here in a space, and so we can continue this conversation, which I think has not exploited the issue fully yet. So thank you for talking, thank you for being with us here and letting us know. Thank you, Magna Vitterli, for telling us about the far future, and thank you, Fatih Gebisher, for telling us about the experience and the adventure of making this possible. So we are at the end of our time of this virtual encounter here. Thank you everyone for listening. We have one last little special for you as a tribute to the time and space of this fluid building. Is a dance, is a performance, originally danced and filmed movement through the space that we know, but it exploits it also in a new way. It is a re-enchanting and reappropriating of this place to create new memories for you as the audience and for everyone in the space. So it is a dance by the company Utilité Publique, and it is directed by Corinne Rocher and Nicolas Petit. And we are now closing here. Thank you, everyone. And the film, I think, will let us fade out and give us new memories and make us look forward to being here for the 12th anniversary in person, hopefully. Thank you.